In this video, I want to make the argument that fantasy does not need deep lore. That doesn't mean it can't have deep lore. But the common myth that we usually hear is that, for a fantasy world to really feel magical, what it needs is to have this huge world to it, like separate from the earth. And it's to the point where like Brandon Sanderson has talked about, creating a world where like no references to our earth is made. And so, there's even this debate amongst fantasy writers of like, well, can I make reference to like a Ottoman couch? Like the Ottoman Empire didn't exist in my fantasy world. Can I make reference to that? Can I say his hair was white like snow if snow is on Earth but it's not on our planet? Like what? And then they'll say, well, yeah, but the writer is like translating the story, so they're using different metaphors. There's this whole thing, right, in which like, oh, I'm just a scribe who's like translating the story, and that's why I'm using these metaphors from Earth, even though Earth doesn't exist in my story. And people think like it can't. It has to be its own entity entirely. You sit down, you write, you look to write a fantasy story. Look up what you need to do, and they're going to give you like you need religions and economics, you need races, you need all of these things to make a fantasy story happen. Excuse me. Let me give you some evidences for why that's not true. And there's some great fantasy stories out there that do not have nearly as deep lore as that. I'm going to start with Hocus Pocus. Hocus Pocus, you could argue, is what we would call low fantasy, and I think low fantasy as a genre in and of itself argues compellingly for that. Things like Dracula, things like werewolves, things that take place in our Earth. It's just like, yeah, the lore is our lore. Go to a history class. It's just what it is. I mean, right, there's a werewolf in London. What's London? It's London. Oh, there are witches in Hocus Pocus, and they're in Salem, Massachusetts. Massachusetts. What is that? That's Massachusetts. And you can have a perfectly good story with like exactly 3 minutes of backstory at the beginning of that movie, in which it's like, oh, like they used to like suck the souls out of children. That's pretty dark and powerful and like, whoa, but it's not like an incredibly comprehensive They're very comfortable with using our metaphors and things like that. And that's fun. That's fun. In fact, some of the most compelling stories just rearrange our world. And that's really all you can do, by the way. I don't think that anybody has truly invented something that is devoid of a concept from Earth, because that's where you are. That's your entire frame of reference. That's cool. And that's actually what makes the story speak to us. When we think of post-apocalyptic fantasies, so like, I'm going to go ahead and use Adventure Time here, right? Like there's episodes where they find a car and they fix it up, and like, that does not take away from it. In fact, that is some pretty cool deep lore, right? To be post-apocalyptic, but it's not elvish. It's just like, oh yeah, the world blew itself up. That's the lore. Everything else, like prehistory-wise, that's you. Cool, that works. That's great. And so there's a lot of opportunities, and I'll go back to those low fantasy genre. High fantasy, you got other worlds, right? There's Harry Potter, which is kind of like this mix where it's like there's another world, but it's actually in our world, so it's kind of like middle fantasy, but high fantasy is where you have like an entirely different world that things exist in. And so I would say, I guess, like Alice in Wonderland. I think I would include Harry Potter in that category. The Chronicles of Narnia, Lord of the Rings is technically, they say it's a prehistory, but I think it's high fantasy. Anyways, low fantasy is like, no, this is in our world, and until the weird element is introduced, you wouldn't know this is fantasy, and it totally works. I mean, we love Dracula. We love werewolves. We love Frankenstein. Like the fantasy community is all about it. They're super into it. Universal Studios, right, just released the Epic Universe because people love those kinds of things. So let's talk about what actually matters then. If it's not having this huge, massive lore, which I would argue can really get in the way of your story sometimes. If you're not gonna be careful to give that heart and craft, don't do it. What really matters is just that. Is the heart and the craft. Is the ability to tell the story that matters to you. And so that can include one fantasy element, or that can include a whole system of things, right? Like you can go full Tolkien, or you can stick to Bram Stoker. And if you've read Bram Stoker Dracula, it just feels like he constantly gets new superpowers, like all the time. Just like, oh, okay, now he's climbing on the walls like a lizard, and oh, now he's a mist, and oh, he can do that too now. Whoa, that's okay. All right. But it works. It's fun. We love it. It's a good time. And ultimately, what I would encourage you to do, if you love building world systems, do that. If you don't love building world systems, don't. Just don't. Tell the next step that's right in your story. Think of promises that you're making at the beginning of the story. If you've promised us a dragon, then bring about the dragon. Make progress towards that goal, and then let the payoff be that we see the dragon. Right? Like, let's use The Hobbit as an example. Dragon very, very clearly promised for us in the beginning. Dragon delivered. Dwarves seeking to reclaim their homeland promised to us. Progress made. Delivered. Bilbo claiming him, like, his identity, like claiming that calling that he has to go on an adventure, going on that adventure, being changed, and like embracing who he is. Um, there's even joke about how like Gandalf has never like fought a dragon before, right? And like, can they even pull this off? And by the end, like that's resolved. There's talk of like, well, who will come? Who will help us? Who won't help us? And then throughout that progress, like more elements are introduced. Like, oh, well, the elves imprison them, right? But then they want help. Oh, we go to Lake Town and they want us. All these things are introduced. And then there's this massive payoff. There's the goblin, right? There's this whole. So the whole thing works together because it's driven well down together. The lore is introduced in the context of promise, progress, payoff, and it doesn't deviate from that. For you, if your story is just like this man is working at his job and he keeps seeing a strange shadow through the window when he's working there late at night, and that's the whole thing, and it turns out to be a vampire, like that can work. You don't need deeper lore than that. That's a good story if you deliver it well. You can do that. That's totally okay. I would encourage you to honor what works for you. Yeah, and just embrace yourself in the middle of it. And I think that is what will make the difference. And so if you're someone who likes to create, that's the big takeaway I have for you in this episode. You need to do what works for you, and you need to remember this framework. I made promises at the beginning of this story. Am I making progress to pay off those promises? And if I'm not, then I need to adjust. And if I am, it's okay. Cool. So if the languages come up, if you want the Dracula figure to start speaking a weird language at some point, cool. Do it. If you don't, if he speaks like a guy from New Jersey, that's fine. That's lore in a sense, right? Like, having any artifacts at all is some kind of lore. And so I would say don't sweat it too much. Deep lore isn't needed for your fantasy. Good storytelling is. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I am so excited for the work I'm doing on my graphic novel, The Graphknight, and I would say that the lore building in that is directly related to the story that I'm making. It's maybe the least amount of lore work that I've ever done, but it's really opened the doors to be like, I'm not confined to what I pre-wrote. I'm making some really cool things, and like, it's just like, okay, cool, he's going to the ruins of Lentok. Let's find out what that's about, and I'm getting to adventure through it with him. And I'm so excited to continue to do that. I love having this time with you guys, and I will see you in the next one.